On today's broadcast, President Park Geun-hye attended a series of meetings with world leaders on Thursday where she pushed Seoul's North Korea policy. South Korea and Russia are set to sign an agreement on military cooperation, and the central bank lowers South Korea's growth outlook. This is KBS World Radio News. I'm Bruce Harrison. President Park Geun-hye attended the ASEAN Plus 3 summit in Brunei on Thursday, following the Korea-ASEAN summit a day earlier. Later Thursday, she joined the East Asia summit with leaders from 17 countries and explained Seoul's North Korea policy. Our Kim In-kyung has more.
President Park Geun-hye attended the ASEAN Plus 3 summit in Brunei with her Southeast Asian counterparts and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. They discussed ways to enhance cooperation between the 10-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations and its 3 Northeast Asian dialogue partners. President Park requested the cooperation of member countries for follow-up measures on Korea's suggestion last year to establish an East Asia Economic Community by the end of 2020. Park also asked for the participation of South Korean businesses in the infrastructure construction projects of ASEAN. The president promised to pass on Korea's development experience to narrow gaps among nations in the region. Following the talks, Park attended the East Asia Summit, which is an 18-nation forum composed of ASEAN, Korea, China, Japan, as well as the United States, Russia, Australia, New Zealand, and India. Key topics at the so-called mini-UN meeting included developing East Asia into an economic community, as well as cooperation in finance, economy, and food security. President Park also explained Seoul's North Korea policy, including nuclear issues. After lunch with the East Asia Summit leaders, Park met with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry to discuss Korean Peninsula issues. Kerry was standing in for President Barack Obama, who canceled this trip because of the U.S. government shutdown. President Park will hold the South Korea-Indonesia Summit in her final leg of a tour to Southeast Asia on Saturday. Kim In-kyung, KBS World Radio News.
Asian regional summits are expressing support for President Park Geun-hye's North Korea policies. Deputy Foreign Minister Lee Kyung-soo said Thursday the leaders at the South Korea-ASEAN summit on Wednesday adopted a chairman's statement expressing their support for Park's North Korea policy. He said the statement, which was issued in the name of Brunei's Sultan Hassan al-Bolkiah, calls on North Korea to abide by its international duties, and the September 19th joint statement reached at the six-party talks in 2005. The statement also expressed support for Seoul's so-called Korean Peninsula trust-building process and Northeast Asia Peace and Cooperation Initiative. He said the chairman's statements of the ASEAN Plus 3 Summit and East Asia Summit will likely contain similar expressions of support. South Korea and Russia have agreed on details of an accord to strengthen bilateral defense cooperation. South Korea's Vice Defense Minister Baek Song-ju is visiting Russia and told reporters Wednesday about the progress of the deal. The envisioned accord would be an upgrade to a memorandum of understanding on military cooperation South Korea and Russia adopted in 1996. The accord will take on the form of a legally binding treaty and is expected to be signed next month at the earliest. Under the deal, South Korea and Russia vowed to expand cooperation in military training exchanges and search and rescue missions at sea. South Korea, the U.S., and Japan have begun their combined naval exercise off the southern coast of the Korean Peninsula. A South Korean Defense Ministry official said Thursday the drill is aimed at preparing for future search and rescue missions in the event of maritime disasters. The official noted the 3 nations previously carried out similar exercises near Jeju Island in May. For the 2-day exercise, the U.S. sent the aircraft carrier USS George Washington, the guided missile cruiser USS Antietam, and the guided missile destroyer USS Preble. South Korean and Japanese Aegis ships and escort vessels are also taking part in the drill. The USS Washington is as large as 3 soccer fields and can accommodate 70 planes and helicopters. The drill was originally scheduled to begin Tuesday but postponed because of Typhoon Danas. The chief of the ruling Saenuri Party is calling for airtight national security against North Korea. in the wake of the State Intelligence Agency's recent report about North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's pledges to unify the two Koreas. Chairman Hwang Woo-hya made the remark in a meeting of the party's Supreme Council Thursday. He warned the North against such an ambition and stressed the South Korean military and public must keep in mind that an impenetrable security posture is the surest way to prevent a war. The head of the National Intelligence Service reported to the Parliamentary Intelligence Committee on Tuesday that the North Korean leader openly and frequently said he aims to unify the two Koreas by force in 3 years. A U.S. expert on North Korea says Pyongyang is willing to implement a moratorium on its nuclear tests and long-range missile launches. Joel Witt said Wednesday that the North may adopt the moratorium at an earlier stage of dialogue, but not as a precondition for dialogue. Witt is a visiting scholar at Johns Hopkins University's Advanced School of International Studies and a former U.S. State Department official. Witt met with North Korea's top nuclear negotiator Lee Yong-ho in Germany last month. On February 29th of last year, North Korea agreed to a moratorium on its nuclear tests, long-range missile launches, and uranium enrichment program in return for U.S. food aid.
You're now listening to the news from KBS World Radio's News Center in Seoul, Korea.
The Bank of Korea lowered South Korea's growth estimate for next year by 0.2 of a percentage point to 3.8% Thursday. It had forecasted growth of 4% in July. Governor Kim Chung-soo announced the new estimate at a news briefing following the central bank's Monetary Policy Committee meeting on Thursday. The central bank maintained its growth forecast for this year at 2.8%. Kim said the latest growth estimate reflects the revised forecast of the International Monetary Fund. In its World Economic Outlook published Tuesday, the IMF expected South Korea to grow 3.7% next year, down from 3.9% in April. It also trimmed its forecast for global economic growth from 3.8% to 3.6%. The Bank of Korea froze the benchmark interest rate at 2.5% on Thursday. The central bank's Monetary Policy Committee chose to maintain the rate for the fifth consecutive month in a meeting chaired by BOK Governor Kim Chung-soo. The central bank lowered the rate in May by 0.25 percentage point to 2.5%. Analysts say the central bank based its decision on its assessment the economy continues to recover and inflationary pressure is not too high. The Ministry of Strategy and Finance said in a recent economic outlook report that all key indicators of output, consumption, and investment suggest the South Korean economy is on track to recovery. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, predicts the U.S., Japan, and Europe's economies will grow in the next 6 months. The OECD unveiled a projection when it issued its composite leading indicators for 33 of its member states and 6 emerging economies for August. The OECD forecast China and Russia's economies are likely to recover in the next 6 months, but the economies of India and Brazil would remain sluggish. The OECD projected South Korea's economy will continue to grow higher than its potential growth rate as its composite leading indicator surpassed 100 for the 8th straight month. A reading above 100 means optimists outnumber pessimists concerning economic conditions looking ahead 6 months, while a reading below 100 means pessimists outnumber optimists. A Japanese daily reports South Korea's foreign minister said Seoul will lift a ban on maritime products from Japan once the South Korean people are no longer fearful of radioactive contamination. Citing diplomatic sources, the Yomiuri Shimbun said Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se told Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida that the inevitable ban was a preventive measure. Yoon's comments apparently came during a meeting with Kishida in New York late last month, after Kishida remarked South Korea's ban lacks scientific basis. The report interpreted Yoon's remarks as a positive reply to the possibility of the ban being removed. It also said the Japanese government will decide whether to file a complaint with the World Trade Organization on Seoul's ban after carefully monitoring the South Korean government. In early September, South Korea banned all marine products from 8 Japanese prefectures over the radiation concerns. Candidate registration begins Thursday for an election later this month to fill 2 seats in Parliament. The National Election Commission will register candidates for 2 days ahead of the October 30th elections in 2 districts. The ruling Sunuri Party nominated Seo Chong-hwan, who served 6 terms in Parliament, for a seat in Hwasong A District in Gyeonggi Province. The ruling party chose former Public Administration Minister Park Myung-jae to run in the Pohong-Ulong District. The main opposition Democratic Party nominated Party Committee Chief for Hwasong A District, Oh Il-hyung, to run against Seo. The leader of the Democratic Party's North Gyeongsang Province office, Ho Dae-man, will run in the Pohong-Ulong District. South Korea's benchmark stock index, the Kospi, fell 1.36 points on Thursday, or 0.7%, to close at 2,001.4. The tech-heavy Kosdaq went up to 0.21 points to close at 529.04. On the Seoul Foreign Exchange Market, the local currency gained 0.1 won against the U.S. dollar, closing at 1,073.6 won.